Welcome back. In this new video, I'm going to be sharing an interesting article I read on the New York Times, and it's about the encyclical Magnificent Humanity that Pope Leo presented last Monday. And it was exactly 135 years after Pope Leo XIII, his predecessor, presented this Encyclical Rerum Novarum. I want to share, a big picture of this encyclical, the most important insights, and in particular, the vision of Pope Leo about artificial intelligence. And Pope Leo warns the entire world about, the risk of the artificial intelligence. The document marks a powerful foray by the leader of the Roman Catholic Church into the debate about the misuse or overuse of artificial intelligence. Pope Leo XIV on Monday set out a sweeping vision of for corporate executives, politicians, and individuals who will shape and be shaped by the future of artificial intelligence, warning leaders to safeguard humanity from AI's most disruptive effects. Leo's declaration came in the form of a papal encyclical, an open letter to all people of goodwill, that ran to roughly 42,300 words in its English version. It outlined its desire to protect humanity, human dignity and agency in an age in which technological threatens, to replace humans in many professional and social roles. He presented it alongside Christopher Olah, a co-founder of Anthropic, a major AI developer, in a symbolic gesture of a dialogue between leaders of the spiritual and technological world, while emphasizing that technology should not be considered in itself as a force antagonistic to humanity. He wrote that the pursuit of greater profits cannot justify choices that systematically sacrifice jobs. Among the other things, Leo called for government regulation of the private companies that are driving the development of AI, protecting and restraining for workers whose jobs are threatened, education to help students think critically about the technology, action to protect children from violent, hypersexualized, or fake information online that is often generated by AI, safeguards to ensure that humans, not artificial intelligence, remain responsible for all decisions regarding the use of mass weapons. Above all, he emphasized the importance of retaining a fundamental social role for all human beings, a society that guarantees employment to only a small fraction of the population despite having a high level of technical development, risk exposing many to forced inactivity, he wrote. And this creates a paradox of material progress and anthropological regression that undermine the foundations of a just and stable social peace, he added. Leo presented the encyclical to a packed hall at the Vatican, said his views had been shaped by a conversation with the scientists, engineers, and political leaders. He singled out Mr. Olah, with whom he pledged to work to find a way for humanity in this time of artificial intelligence. What a great sign of hope it is that in our difference we can listen to one another, Leo said. And Mr. Olah, who is not a Catholic, praised the Pope's initiative, acknowledging that companies like his own need moral guidance to avoid being swayed by a set of incentives and constraint that can sometimes conflict with doing the right things. We need moral voices that incentives cannot bend, Mr. Olah added. Today is just the beginning, the start of a longer collaboration between those of us who are building this and those who can see what we from the inside cannot, Mr. Olah said. Both men spoke along with a panel of theologians and Vatican officials before an audience of cardinals, computer scientists, journalists, and diplomats, including Brian Barch, the United States ambassador to the Holy See. Leo had made clear his concern with AI as early as his second day as Pope, just over a year ago, when he told the College of Cardinals that under his leadership, the Church would address the risk that evolving technology poses to human dignity and justice and labor. He has since repeatedly spoken about AI, including during his trip to Turkey and Lebanon, in an address to Catholic university leaders, and even when celebrating the International Day of Mathematics last week. The Vatican announced it had created a commission of senior Catholic officials to discuss the challenges posed by AI. Pope Francis, Leo's immediate predecessor, had also warned about the dangers of artificial intelligence and called for ethical use of technology. Although Leo publicly presented his encyclical on Monday, he formally signed it on May 15, the 135th anniversary of the publication of Rerum Novarum, or in English, of New Things, a major encyclical written in 1891 by his namesake Leo XIII. The Pope's encyclical was timed to prompt comparison with the early document, which guided Catholic teaching on how to protect the workers after the technological and industrial disruption of the 19th century. Written amid the upheaval of the Industrial Revolution, Rerum Novarum sought to safeguard the rights and dignity of the working class, and became one of the foundational texts of modern Catholic social teaching. It called on government to save unfortunate working people from the cruelty of men of greed who use human beings as a mere instrument for money making, even as it praised the discovery of science. In the new encyclical titled Magnificat Humanitas, or Magnificent Humanity, Leo struck a similar tone, warning of the new threat to workers posed by artificial intelligence. Work, he wrote, is more than a way of earning income, but a requirement of the human condition, a normal path toward maturity, development, and personal fulfillment. He called for the protection of employment opportunities and the irreplaceable role of the individual. The encyclical also called for imposing the most rigorous ethical constraints of weapons developed using artificial intelligence, continuing Leo's and the Vatican's long-standing opposition to war. The growing ease with which autonomous weapons systems can be deployed make war more feasible and less subject to human control, Leo wrote. That, he added, contradicted the principle that armed force should be used only as a last resort in case of legitimate self-defense. Leo also used the Encyclical to apologize for the Vatican role in slavery. In a section about modern-day slavery, Leo personally apologized for the papacy's failure to condemn early forms of slavery and for supporting rulers who engaged in it. Although the encyclical includes significant references to scripture and religious teaching, the document in many ways reads like a policy paper from a think tank or lawmaker. Leo wrote in detail, for example, of the importance of protecting children who are particularly susceptible to the warping effect of technology. Psychological and psychiatric literature had documented with growing insistence how early an unsupervised exposure to digital devices and social media can negatively impact sleep, attention span, control of emotion and relationship, especially during the most vulnerable stages of life, at a time with tragic consequences, he wrote. And this is, let me say, a big picture of the encyclical. Now, I want to share with you, the points of two historic groundbreaking milestones in Catholic social teaching. In 1891, Pope Leo XIII presented the Rerum Novarum, which translated in English means of new things. And this text is widely considered the foundational document of a modern Catholic social teaching, written to address the industrialization of the 19th century and the plight of the working class. What are the core insights of this encyclical? The first one is dignity of labor. Leo XIII famously stated that workers are not mere commodity or instrument for making money. Capital and labor need each other. Capital cannot do without labor. No labor without capital. The second insight is the right of a living wage. The encyclical introduced the moral requirement of a just wage, define it as enough to support a worker and a family, a reasonable, frugal comfort, allowing them to save and acquire property. Another insight is defense of private property and rejection of socialism. The Pope strongly condemned state socialism for attempting to abolish private property, arguing that owning property is a natural human right that stimulates industry and maintains family stability. Then the right to form unions. This is another, core value of this encyclical. Rerum Novarum explicitly defended the natural right of workers to form trade unions and associations to protect their interests, a radical stance for the Vatican at that time. And then the role of the state. It rejected pure laissez-faire of capitalism, asserting that the government has a moral duty to intervene in the economy when necessary to protect the poor, prevent exploitation, and ensure safe working conditions. So let's focus on Pope Leo XIV, Magnificat Humanitas, magnificent humanity in English. Just as the Church historically responded to the Industrial Revolution, Pope Leo XIV, first encyclical, addressed the defining technological shift of the 21st century, artificial intelligence and the digital transformation. So the core insight of this encyclical. The first one is the danger of optimization of a communion. The Pope warns against the Babel syndrome, a societal obsession with efficiency where human beings begin to see themselves and others as a project to be optimized rather than a person called to relationship. The second is the value of human limitation. In a stark critique of a transhumanism and enhanced human ideology, the test highlights the human limit. Aging, illness, vulnerability are not programming defects to be corrected. Instead, humanity often flourishes through this limitation by discovering wisdom and community. Algorithm bias and neutrality. The encyclical warns that entrusting algorithms with decisions regarding who is watching cloaks discrimination in a false veneer of objectivity, removing empathy and political responsibility. And the last one is truth as common good. With the rise of deepfakes and mass disinformation, the Pope stresses that a society cannot deliberately, justly, or build trust in the line between truth and falsehood is constantly manipulated for profit or power. Sorry, there is another core value of this encyclical, is the concentration of power. Power over AI is heavily consolidated in the hands of a few transnational corporations. The Pope calls for robust international regulation and urges labor unions to protect workers against AI-driven job insecurity. So now, in this, the last part, I want to give you a summary comparison between the two encyclicals. And, and I will do this on three focus areas. The first one is event that causes great changes. Rerum Novarum was, published, was written in front of the Industrial Revolution. And Magnificat Humanitas by Leo XIV in front of artificial intelligence and digitalization. The second focus is the primary danger. For Pope Leo XIII was the exploitation of labor by unbridled capitalism. For Leo XIV is the dehumanization and the treating people as data to optimize. And the last focus area is the core defense. Rerum Novarum of Leo XIII, the main, let me say, focus was the physical safety and the fair wages, right to private property for the, the people, the working people. And for Leo XIV is the human dignity, truth, ethical frameworks, and over algorithm. And this is, the topic that I want to share with you today. Today, I do hope that you found it interesting. Thank you so much for watching.